Hey everybody out there, this is Seto, and today again guys, we're back outside. Been walking around a lot today taking pictures at my work so I can do my project for my final project for my, I should say, so I can get my degree in my hands even though I graduated. But yes guys, today we're going to talk about a topic that is pretty much the age-old question in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! And that is Yu-Gi-Oh! Still for kids? Now, this is a question that many players have asked for a long time. Is Yu-Gi-Oh! Still made for kids and everything of that nature? Now, for me personally, I'm going to try to tackle this in many different ways. I'm going to point out points that why it's not for kids, and then we're going to come back to points that, yeah, it's somewhat still is for kids, really. So, I know people usually say, no, it's not for kids. Point blank, here are my reasons why, end of video. We're going to try to look at both sides of the scale actually for once. So first off, some reasons why I do not think Yu-Gi-Oh! Is for kids anymore. Look at the community. Do you see kids playing this game? And I'm standing up right now guys, so I do apologize for moving around a lot. But yes, really, look at the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community out there. It's not a lot of kids. It's mainly teenagers and middle-aged adults. Or young adults, I guess you could say, really. A lot of the Yu-Gi-Oh! People I know out there, they're 17, 18, 19, all the way up to 27, 28 years old. Some I know that are even 30. So yeah, there's a lot of Yu-Gi-Oh! Players out there, but not all of them are kids. I don't see a lot of the kids at locals. Now, however, I will say from my experience and travels in my local area, I have come across Yu-Gi-Oh! Players that are kids. The difference is a lot of these teenagers and adults, they usually congregate at locals. The young kids nowadays, what they do is they usually play at the mall, they play at school, they play at somebody's house. They're playing for more casual reasons than competitive reasons, which we are, I find. It's a lot different age gap. And then I think back to when I was a kid, and when I first started in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I really didn't play that competitively until what? It was a couple sets in, really, but it was about 3-4 sets into the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I started being competitive more. I forget what exact set it was, but I know it had Gravekeepers in it because that piqued my interest. But Pharaonic Guardian, I think it was. That's where I really became more competitive and start like looking at the competitive edge and learning about the competitive scene and things of that nature. Went to locals for the first time. You know, I really didn't go to locals till I was about, what, 14, 15 years old, I think it was the first time I was. And it was an experience. You learned so much, yet you got your ass handed to you so many times. So, yeah, I mean, in that aspect, I find that Yu-Gi-Oh! There is still a kid community out there, and maybe a lot of those young Yu-Gi-Oh! Kids do play online. I know a lot of adults play online on things like Yu-Gi-Oh! Pro and Dev Pro and, you know, YGO Salvation. You know, used to be DN as well, but not anymore, you know. So, yeah, I mean, a lot of players, there's a large Yu-Gi-Oh! Community out there, larger than you probably think. And they do incorporate kids. I mean, they do have dragon leagues, I guess you could say, with dragon duels, where you have, I think it's like 12 and under, or 13 and under, I forget it is. It's one of those age gaps. I know my brother used to do that when it first came out, and he loved it. It was really good. It was less competitive, you know, you didn't have to build the best deck at the time. But, you know, once that mom and pop start giving you money to build the best deck, all bets are off. But yeah, it was a thing, and it still is a good thing. And it separates really the competitive player, you know, the more people that can make money and the younger kids generation. So it is a thing. There are young kids out there that play Yu-Gi-Oh! And there are adults that play Yu-Gi-Oh! I think the thing is the older adults are more vocal about it than the younger kids that really are. Also, you have to look at the fact of the matter is that a lot of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Competitive community is adults and middle-aged people. Another thing I guess you could mention as well is the fact of the matter is, I lost what I was going to say for a second, but yes, I just gained it back. Is the fact of the matter is, I guess you say, look at the prices of the Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards. Now, I would say for the most part, really, the Yu-Gi-Oh! Market, if you invest early, you make good investments, you plan for what decks you want to play, it's not really expensive. If you have a lot of the staple cards, it's not an expensive proposition. However, for a kid, You know, me at 13, 14 years old, yeah, I had some money because I had, you know, my grandmother and whatnot, but still, I could not drop $100, you know, $200 on a Yu-Gi-Oh card game. I'll get smacked for that. Back in the day, probably would get smacked for it still if my grandmother was still alive, but whatever. Yeah, it's really true. Look at the card game. It's very expensive, and a lot of these pricey cards, Yu-Gi-Oh kids could not, you know, young kids could not afford. But then I think about it for a second, and I say to myself, wait, when I was a young kid, once upon a time, playing this game we call Yu-Gi-Oh, I do reckon and do recall that I really didn't care about being competitive, really. I just played what I wanted to. And then I think about the sets. We'll get to that in a second, but really think about it. Most young kids that you know, before they go to their first locals or play online competitively, or if, you know, they're in the know and they know more about the competitive scene. Granted, I know the internet's a thing compared to when I was playing back in the day. And I apologize, the sun is in my way. I'll try to back up a little bit more. But, yeah, I mean, a lot of kids really don't care about that. All the kids I've met around my area that play at school and whatnot, and they tell me, with the people I talk to on, I guess you say this Yu-Gi-Oh channel, and I see in comment sections that are young, they really play more casually. They play what they want to play. They really don't care. And a lot of the cards they play, you know, the rares, commons, supers, sometimes really expensive cards, structure deck stuff. You know, it's not the Dark Destroyer, $100. It's not, you know, the Blue Eyes White Dragon card deck now that costs a lot of money. Well, whatever the case may be, it's usually cheap, fun decks they play. When you're an adult and you learn more and you grow more, then you know, hey, I can pick up those important decks. Hey, I know what's a good card. Hey, I want to be more competitive. I want to do better than what I was when a kid. And that's when you put your money down to play more competitive and buy those secrets and ultra cards. You know what I mean? So another thing I'll mention is the television, the anime. Now, I would argue that 5Ds in the original Yu-Gi-Oh show did have a darker side to it and was geared more for a teenager or young adult audience. I would agree with that. You look at some of the things like, you know, Yu-Gi, and you look at Season 0, and you look at, you know, the original Yu-Gi-Oh before it was Yu-Gi-Oh, you look at the themes, and, you know, the death and the killings, and you look at 5Ds, and you have all those people dying, being reborn, a lot deeper stuff than what a kid can comprehend. And then I look somewhat at Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5, or Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc, you know, V, and you notice that it does have a deeper meaning, but at the beginning it was more kid-friendly. You know, if you haven't seen if you've watched the dub version, it's a lot more like kid-friendly. But if you look at the OCG, what they came out with originally, and you look at some of that dark stuff, and you look at Yuya going like, oh, freaking Satanist, you know, like red glowing eyes, spiky hair, you kind of think to yourself, I don't know if this is kid-friendly, really. So, Yu-Gi-Oh, like many things out there, Pokemon, there's many shows like Sesame Street you look at. Yeah, the things that the adults notice, the kids don't notice all the time. And what makes it goes right over their heads. They don't think about it. Look at us with Pokemon and everything nowadays. We look back at Pokemon and Yu-Gi-Oh and we're like, wow, that was really sexy. We're like, we didn't understand that. Now as an adult, I understand what that means. Back then I did not. Same thing with this generation probably, even though they have the internet. So yes, there's those things. But like I've said throughout this video, there's things that are true about, you know, why Yu-Gi-Oh is geared for adults and things for kids. People say, well, why do they not give us money as prize support? It's not about they're afraid kids getting it. It's nothing of that nature, and I do feel that it is, in a way, stunting the growth of the game of Yu-Gi-Oh! I will agree with that. But it's not because of those reasons. It's because of Kazuki Takahashi saying that, he said this before, and he stated this before when he created the game, he didn't want it, you know, he didn't want people gambling on it. He didn't want it to be, you know, about kids getting a whole bunch of money or anything, or adults really. He wanted it to be a hobby, a fun thing. So, granted, as we get older, and a lot of the older Yu-Gi-Oh! Original Yu-Gi-Oh! Players get older, we do want it for money. We do want to get something out of it, and I get that. But at this roots, it is still a kid's card game. It's still going to be, because the new blood that's coming in is usually young kids or young adult or young teens, I find, and players that are returning veterans, or players that played when they were young and now getting back into the game. I can't tell you how many times on this channel I've gotten comments of, I'm a returning Yu-Gi-Oh player that used to play back in the day. How is the game different? I used to play a couple years ago. It's changed so much. You know, what's changed? You know, what's a fun deck? Hey, can you make this old deck more competitive? Things of that nature. Now, I've just noticed these things, and you know, yeah, you have to remember, like, at the heart of this game, it's still a kid's game, and it sucks. But at the same time, it is, if you look, like I said, look at the sets. Look at what the kids play, look at what the adults play. The kids don't really care. The adults care. Look at what the kids watch. The adults didn't really care about the manga. Look at these things, and you start to notice that Konami, in a way, understands these things to some extent. I know we don't all give Konami a lot of, you know, golf clap, but I'll give them a little golf clap for this. But it's really true. They do understand this, and that's why they make the holo cards more expensive, because they know the big kids want to pay that money for that on that set, and the young kids. That's why if you look at anime cards in a set, look at things like Battling Boxers, all the way down to Fluffles, all the way down to Melodiouses. Any freaking thing that is on the TV show, most of the time, is very cheap at first. It comes out as a common or a rare. You know, look at Performa Pals, really. Yeah, there's Performa Pal Sorcerer. He was a secret. Okay, that's because he was an intricate part to the deck. But look at all the things that Yuya, and look at all his things, all his friends have played, all their anime decks, Raid Raptors, everything. It's been pretty cheap. It's been commons and rares and supers for most of the part, or very cheap cards. Why do you think that is? Because that's what the kids want to play, the anime stuff. The big boys, they want to play the best deck most of the time, or a better deck, the competitive deck, or the old deck that used to be competitive and they still want to play because we're nostalgic about it. This guy, Six Sams and Gravekeepers. That's what I'm trying to say, guys. So those are just my thoughts on the topic on is Yu-Gi-Oh geared for kids still, or an adult. I think it's still geared for kids, but it's also been starting to be more geared for adults if you look at what I've talked about here in this video. And I apologize for the sunlight, guys. It's beaming right down on me now. But yeah, tell me what your thoughts are down below, guys. And until next time, take care, have fun dueling, good luck dueling, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care, everybody.